My phone rings. I find it on the table next to the sofa where I'm watching football and reading homework. I see that it's my mother calling me. I don't know why she's calling me exactly, but a feeling of guilt and anxiety seizes me. I know it can't be good. It's the Sunday after Thanksgiving, 2003, 21 years ago. I am in Oklahoma, getting ready to fly back to college in North Carolina. And my mother is calling me from back home in Massachusetts, where she's in the hospital. And as we get talking, as I hear her voice, I realize this isn't what I expected. It's worse. I'm in Oklahoma because I'm pursuing a dream. I want to be an all-American. It's not a vague concept, hot dogs, apple pie. All-American is the status you earn when you take one of the top 8 places at the National Collegiate Wrestling Tournament at the end of the season. I've always wanted to be the best. I'm naturally competitive, but also I was pushed by my family. I was the first one in the family born in the United States, son of Soviet Jewish immigrants. My mother pushed me hard, and all of us hard, to be well-rounded. Good in school and good in music were what mattered to her. And she was willing to sacrifice so we could fulfill our potential. She drove us to music lessons, to school events, to games, anything we thought we needed or she thought we needed to be our best. She was willing to give everything to that cause. But I wanted to be a sports star. I think I got my love of sports from my older brother, who I think adopted sports as part of adopting an American identity when he came to the country. Whatever the case, there's family stories of me reading the Boston Globe sports page on the potty. Video footage of me playing football at my 4th birthday party. I wanted to be a professional athlete, a star. And for obvious reasons, my basketball dreams were short-circuited. Fortunately, my brother discovered wrestling when he was in 10th grade and I was in 3rd grade, and I took that sport naturally. He became my coach, pushing me to succeed in that arena. Success in any field requires a lot of sacrifice. Wrestling is especially demanding, though, because for one thing, you're battling with a person right in front of you. You have to train very hard to get to that point. And you have to worry about your weight all the while and make weight every time you go to a tournament. And I loved it. I loved the feeling of going the extra mile. I gave up my summers to a demanding job. After work, I would go lift weights or find a wrestling mat to work out on. The money I earned didn't go to hanging out with friends or to buying a car, but to attending national wrestling tournaments. And then the season expanded to the springs and the falls. My brother drove me across New England looking for places to wrestle. We wrestled in barns, in abandoned mills, in basements, anywhere where there was somebody decent to go against and a mat to wrestle on. And I loved it. I loved the feeling of being the last one in the room when people walked by and could see me through the window, and I could tell that they were just thinking, what is wrong with him? What is he doing in there? That was me. That was my pride. My goal was to make it to the highest level, Division I college wrestling. Fortunately, that aligned with my mother's goals because she just wanted us to get a good education. I didn't get into Harvard, which is the dream for any immigrant family in the New England area, but I got into a good school, though a few states away. I'm sure my mother wanted me to be closer to home, but I think she was happy with the education I was going to get. Once I made it to college, I had to reset my goals, which is where I came up with the idea of being an all-American. What could be more validating of all these sacrifices, of all this effort I had put in, than being one of the best of the best? The wrestling season is actually in the winter, which means you have to give up your winter holidays. But that's not a big deal. For one, we're Jewish, so Christmas doesn't really matter. For two, New Year's is kind of overrated. But the college season expands to include November, which means it includes Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving, now there's a holiday. The food, the feast, the family, the football, the leaves, the tradition, the movies, it's the complete package. My favorite holiday. But in college, we always had a tournament 2 days afterwards. So we would have to stay on campus, have Thanksgiving as a team, eat way too much, as you do, lose that weight, and go wrestle 2 days later. My mother wasn't thrilled when I didn't come home that first year, but she was also kind of used to it. She knew what kind of crazy son she had. The exception to all of this is 2003, the year in question. For whatever reason, the tournament isn't happening that weekend, and I could have gone home. Many of my teammates did. I could have celebrated with my family. But I was pursuing a dream. I was on a mission. I knew that I had to do everything I could to make it to that goal. And so if I could find somewhere, anywhere to wrestle, I was going to do it. I was going to compete. Thus, Oklahoma. I had a teammate there. I had been there before. And so we decided, Noah, my teammate, and I, to go have Thanksgiving at his family's house and then go to the tournament a couple days later. We ate too much, again, as you do. We had to lose weight again, as you do. We went to Walmart, and instead of a Black Friday sale, we went and bought plastic suits, those sort of spacesuit-looking things that trap in heat, so that as you're running on the flat roads of Oklahoma, you look like a couple of misshapen brothers sweating your eyes out trying to make weight. Again, I loved it, sort of. We made weight. We made it to the tournament. Did reasonably well. We both won a few matches. We weren't going to be All-Americans that weekend. We didn't win the tournament, but we were happy with the progress we made. We went back to Noah's hometown, hung out with his friends that night because they were in town for Thanksgiving, and the weekend felt like a success. Sunday afternoon, he's off seeing a friend or an old girlfriend or whatever, and I'm alone at his house watching football, getting ready to go back to school when I get that phone call. The thing is, this isn't the first phone call I've received from home this weekend. The part I've left out is that my mother, by this point, has been battling breast cancer for 7 years. 7 years is a long time for a 19-year-old. More than a third of your life, probably half of your aware life. And it had become normal to us. On the surface, my mother seemed like the same. She did immunotherapy, so she would take shots 3 times a day, go to the Bahamas 3 times a year for treatment. She would complain a little bit about feeling tired. She would complain about feeling a little bit of pain. But she was still the same mother, still driving us everywhere, still sacrificing, still doing all she could so that we could be successful. And we kind of took that for granted. She was still the same sunny optimist through most of these 7 years. But in the months leading up to Thanksgiving, she had been having trouble with her vision. She wasn't able to see. And if she couldn't see, everything else falls apart. She can't work, she can't drive us anywhere, she can't be the person and the mother that she's been for so long. And she got so frustrated with the doctors not finding anything that she finally checked herself into the hospital over this Thanksgiving weekend, which is where the phone call comes. Danya, she says to me, I'm going to sue them. I'm going to sue the doctors for $1 million. Okay. They found a tumor, and I'm going to sue them for $1 million, and I'm going to give it all to cancer centers for Jews. Now, the tumor had entered her skull and was impinging on the optical nerve, thus the vision challenges. But beyond that, I didn't know what to say, because her voice, it sounded thin and giddy. It was a false optimism. It wasn't the optimism of her nature. It was one fueled by drugs and whatever else they had her on in the hospital. And I couldn't be the one to burst her bubble from across the country, could I? Why $1 million? Why do you want to help only Jews, Mama? I couldn't say anything, really. I made some positive mumblings. I asked when she might go home, and then she was tired and we hung up. But it was only after we hung up that it hit me. This wasn't normal. My mother was never going to get better. She would die from this cancer. We went back to school, back to our year, did all our wrestling that year, didn't make it to All-American, never did actually. I went home for Christmas for a few days. I went home over summer vacation. My mother finally did chemotherapy, finally did radiation, started to look frailer, started to lose her hair, looked more like a shell of herself. And finally the next September, as I'm walking out of a class on a Tuesday morning, I see that I've missed a call from my brother. And when I call him back, he says, "It's time. You need to come home." So I run back to my apartment and I throw all my things together and I look for a ride, and it ends up being my friend Noah again from Oklahoma who drives me to the airport. And as we're driving, I'm thinking to myself, is this the last time I'm going to be able to go home? And I'm thinking about the different types of sacrifices my mother and I have made.